All right, so good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Cynthia Lawrence. I'm the Director of Biotechnology and Workforce Continuing Education here at Wake Tech. So I wanted to tell you about a couple of programs that we have, and one of those is BioWork and some career tracks that we actually have that is part of that program. So BioWork is a 136-hour non-credit certificate course that's offered through Workforce Continuing Education here at Wake Tech and several other community colleges across North Carolina that can lead to an entry-level position as a process technician. Because we have such an increase in demands for skilled process technicians in various drug manufacturing areas around Raleigh and the RTP area, this class is very much highly in demand currently. Now, there are 8 units that go with BioWork that we're going to talk about, but let's talk about why there's such a large demand. Currently, we have become a mecca for biopharmaceutical companies in North Carolina. And whenever they come, they want trained technicians. So we, along with industry partners and a consortia, have worked together to use BioWork as an entry-level certificate for folks to get jobs in the industry. And it pays quite lucratively, starting out at about $45,000 per year. So it's not bad for using 136 hours of your time to get this non-credit certificate. Now, what type of careers do we have from BioWork? You're going to qualify for career opportunities like manufacturing technician, a process technician, and this is roles where only if you have a high school diploma plus the short-term training from this BioWork program are required as a minimum to get you in the door to get this job. So BioWork, we now have some great things that we can also talk about, but it is biotechnology industry. We also do a job overview of what it's like to work in that environment as far as facilities design. And it's basically designed not for your comfort if you're working in that area, but to keep the bad things out because it has to be cleaner even than a hospital. So you also have to be able to work safely because you're making drugs that very often bypass someone's immune system, and it's being used to help them. So you have to follow current good manufacturing practices. You have to understand metrics, math, safety, some technology as well, because they use some automated systems. Some general chemistry for process manufacturing, like what is sugars, salts, buffers, pH. Process flows, technology, and equipment. A lot of the industry uses something that's called Delta V. So it's a computer program of automation that tells pieces of equipment when it's time to add media or buffers to things that you're growing or you're fermenting because you're growing cells. Also having to control that process and maintain quality because it is an FDA regulated, the biopharmaceutical industry is FDA regulated. So aseptic processing, so knowing what it is to be clean. And even past that to the point where you become very hyper thought process on being clean. Cell growth, and it could be a variety because gene therapy is also exploding across the state right now. So you could be growing mammalian cells or you could be working on bacterial cell lines as well. And then part of BioWork, because as part of the NC Bio Network, is we want to make sure that for your job search and resume and interviews that we're working with you on how to network, how to set up LinkedIn profile, work on resumes, get those resumes approved, and then get you into job fairs. In fact, we just had one on the 14th. We had a virtual job fair for our BioWork students. And we also have an in-person job fair coming up April 25th at the North Carolina Biotechnology Center as part of the consortia of where we're working across the state with industry partners to get BioWork students employed. Also, BioWork counts for 2 courses in our our Biopharma Tech Associate Degree program, and that's BPM 110 and PTC 110. So you get 8 college credits for taking a 136-hour course. Now, you may have some questions about, well, how long is that? And what type of format do you offer BioWork in? BioWork is in day classes. We have evening classes. We have hybrid of where you would meet online in teams like we're meeting now, and your instructor would lecture with you and discuss the different units. And then you would meet in person for lab. Or we also have completely online where you meet for lecture and lab online, and your instructor works with you through the labs and the lab material that are offered through NC Bio Network through the course material. And BioWork is also an industry recognized credential. Now, as we've been developing the program, we know that once you've gotten BioWork and you get in the industry, where do you go and what do you do next? So for this year, it's new for 2023. We're now doing some open enrollment courses. So where you've learned what we call with BioWork, what we call skimming across the surface and learning those units to where you are value added to the industry, to where they don't have to focus on training someone that has no exposure to biopharmaceutical. This is deeper dives into some of the subjects that BioWork is comprised of. So we are working with industry trainers and subject matter experts to offer additional training for folks that have gotten in the industry as open enrollment courses. So you're looking at all the acronyms that are sitting on this page, but CGMP stands for current good manufacturing practices, which the industry is required to do because of the FDA regulations. They have to be current on their technology and their safety measures as far as making those biopharmaceutical products. They also have to follow good documentation practices and data integrity. And if they're aseptic processing, which a lot of the industry does, there's two types of processing. There's terminal sterilization or there's aseptic processing. And with aseptic processing, you're going along step by step to make sure that whatever air grade you're in, you're gowning up appropriately, you're following the appropriate, as you can look at the people in the photo, they're dressed up in what we call PPE, which is protective measures of how they're dressed and gowned in. There's hand washing techniques, there's ways that you spray equipment in, and that's what aseptic processing 1 and 2 gives you, that deeper dive into how you would do that to make sure you are producing that quality product that doesn't have any foreign material or any type of contamination in it. With anything, you have to know, how am I going to actually perform these procedures? So being able to write effective standard operating procedures that someone could follow, meaning someone could go behind whoever wrote that standard operating procedure and do it the same way over and over. So we have, in this case, classes on how to write effective standard operating procedures. Micropipetting. And in this case, we work on 2 things with micropipetting: your precision and your accuracy, to make sure that you're delivering the same amount of microliters every time you're micropipetting. And then a deeper dive into how to gown appropriately. And we also have some pre-apprenticeship opportunities, as well as some scholarship opportunities that we'll put in the chat box later. And because getting a job and having folks have those careers and having those success stories means so much to us, we have been awarded part of the EDA Build Back Better grant, the ability to hire some extra folks to help us. And one of those is a biotechnology career navigator who can help with resume development for our BioWork students, as well as helping network on LinkedIn, helping with preparing people as far as mock interviews, and working to really dress up that resume to where it's very professional. So any questions so far? All right. We also partner, as far as our biotechnology division, with the Capstone Center, which is situated at NC State at the Gold Leaf building. And it's right on the 2nd floor above BTech. Now, what this does is, with our industry partners that I've mentioned a lot, is we coordinate with them to offer training, including training for FDA audits. So after you get hired in the industry, if you take BioWork, you may be asked to go to the Capstone Center to get some further training. They may even do boot camps for you. And this is just a partnership that we have with other community colleges through through North Carolina, and through the NC Bio Network for development of courses and training, even of our other community college faculty as well. So this supports economic development, expansion, and technology changes for industry, and we work along with customized trainers to train the trainers to where we can also offer some of these classes at Wake Tech. So what you're going to see is some of the courses that we just mentioned, but to add to that, industrial microbiology, cell culture, fermentation, chromatography, again, the micropipetting, what about validation, which is validating a process as well as gene therapy. And so that link will also be here as well. Excuse me, I apologize. I am home. I have bronchitis. So our locations for our classes are Western Wake, Mill Pond campus in Cary. And we also were approved through an appropriation for a new campus. So Western Wake is going to have its own new campus in a couple of years. Also, BioWork is also offered at the Western Wake, as well as our open enrollment courses and our Lilly Science and Technology Center. This is a new building. It's 63,614 square feet. And that's at the Wake Tech RTP campus in Mooresville. So that offers BioWork, biotechnology, associate degree program, and our high school program. We also have a new campus again. Eastern Wake 4.0 is going to open in 2024. So we're going to have the integration of manufacturing, automation, biotech. BioWork will be offered out there. So that's 3 campuses now for BioWork. And our biopharmaceutical technology program will move from our southern campus over to our Eastern Wake campus. So lots of exciting things for our programs as we're going through. And if you're thinking about, well, what are my next steps after BioWork? How do I know what program I want to go into? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. There are 2 programs or pathways that you can use after you take BioWork. One of those is the Biopharmaceutical Technology Associate Degree Program. And the other one is the Biotechnology Associates. So you got biopharmaceutical and biotechnology. And you're like, well, how do I know which one I want to take? What's the right one? So your biopharmaceutical technology associate degree is in manufacturing. And I mentioned Delta V earlier. Quality and validation, process and biomanufacturing, any type of equipment and instrumentation. So we're working on getting folks hired as subject matter experts, safety. And your contact for that is Edward Garner. He is our instructor program director for our biopharmaceutical technology program. And so I've got that on the slide, but we're also going to drop that in the chat for you in case that's also something that you're interested in. And you're like, well, how do I know if that's the one that's for me? There are 2 things that we're going to talk about. So anyone that's on the call, how many of you like to work with people? Please unmute for me. Anybody like to work with people?
I like to work around people. I can't say that I'd want to be like that to be my main focus of my job.
All right, well, biopharmaceutical, that's where you're going to work with people. So you're going to work on the floor in a manufacturing area. And it's actually a degree that's in high demand because we need skilled process technicians across the fields of drug manufacturing in the Raleigh and RTP area. So if you want to work for Merck, which does a lot of animal science, Biogen, GSK, Fujifilm, or Securus, those like Pfizer, depending on where you're geographically located, that's the type of jobs that someone that has biopharmaceutical technology associate's degree would go in and do. So big equipment, gene therapy, making vaccines and medicines. That's what that type of degree program would do. So if you're interested in chemical quality assurance, microbiological quality assurance, maybe a product inspector, reviewing documents, a manufacturing technician, a process technician, and a validation technician, if that's the type of thing you think is up your alley, that's the type of degree that you want to look into. Now, our next degree in contact with that is Jill Mikalecki. She's our program director. This is for those folks that I like to work by myself. Maybe I'm a little introverted. I'm really interested in microbiology, chemistry, genetics, and I'd really like to do bench work and manipulate DNA. And that would be the biotechnology associate degree program. Now, some up and coming new things that are going on with that degree is we need lab technicians too, and lots of different biological and chemical technologies that are growing in the Raleigh and RTP area. So if you think about bioag or bioagricultural, and that's something that you're interested in, and again, some of these same companies, they need lab techs you saw on the biopharmaceutical degree area, but they still have to have lab techs like QC lab techs, maybe even quality assurance. Again, Charles River Laboratories, Biogen, LabCorp, Aerotech. So that would be the type of thing of where you would work in a lab and you would work with equipment that runs chemical assays. You would run samples, maybe for environmental monitoring, or where you're making sure that you're backing up with data from producing those products from those biopharmaceutical degree folks, that you are saying, hey, what we're doing is correct. We have no contamination, and we can show that by taking samples in the area and running them in our lab. So that's where these two would go together really well. Now, those types of careers, those graduates are going to qualify for several career opportunities. Research assistant to a biologist or chemist, which is fun. You got to be careful though, perfect level of education, not to where you're the biologist and chemist, but where you get to do a lot of the fun stuff. A laboratory tech, an instrumentation technician, QC or quality control assurance technician. So this is the kind of the fun things behind the scenes that we don't, you're not always you're working on a shift, but you're working more independently. So if you're asking yourself which program is right for me after seeing some of this information, don't feel bad. A lot of people kind of have to figure, do I want to work in a team or do I want to focus and be by myself? So most of the people that work in biopharma, they're going to do it in work groups. So they're going to be associated with a specific area. In manufacturing, so you could be with a team working in a filling or clean room suite. You could have some very strict procedures that you follow. In other words, those current good manufacturing practices that we're talking about that drive your success. So most of that work in biotechnology could be done independently, though, or in small groups, so where you're working in a lab or you're going out and you're collecting samples on your own. So you're working on that piece of equipment in the lab, following that lab protocol. You're measuring specific chemical content of a drug and making sure that what they say it is comprised of, it is exactly down to that, even that microgram that it's comprised of. that you're looking at that microorganism to make that protein for that drug. You're looking at its stereochemistry to make sure you're following those good laboratory practices that drives the success and that data that says whenever we're putting that drug out for FDA approval, we're saying it is the components that it is comprised of is exactly the same time and time again. So it gives you two choices of what to think about. Now, are you mechanically inclined? Do you like to work with your hands? So in biopharma, there's large pieces of equipment. When I worked in the industry, I worked with a 2,000 liter bioreactor. It was huge. It took up a good portion of the room. I saw floor scales that were huge. You would stand on them and they would measure to make media for totes that you would, that were wide, and you would push them down a hallway that were full of media to grow and to ferment things. There was filling equipment. So your role is to do minor pre-post cleaning, minor servicing of equipment. You're like, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you have to follow cleanliness standards. So then you've got that right mindset. It's even more so in the industry. So you may work at computer terminals to remotely monitor drug production. But in biotechnology, you're going to be that small lab bench type of equipment, pH meters, HPLC, so chromatography, micropipettes, and microscopes. So your role is going to kind of be more fine-tuned. If you feel like I like math and I really like working with equipment, I'm really an analytical type person, maybe biotechnology is for you. You've got to document and record everything, but that's also in biopharma when you follow batch records. So again, trying to figure out which one is for you. And then figuring out which entry-level position really interests you. Would it be biopharma with as a quality assurance technician? Would it be a product inspector, a documentation associate, maybe a manufacturing technician, product or process validation? Would you enjoy working in a lab with microbiology? So looking at microbes under a microscope, maybe a clinical lab technician or a lab associate. So again, it's what interests you. What would you find so fascinating that every day that you feel like you're not really working, you're in, what they say, if you really enjoy what you're doing, you never work a day in your life. So those are things that you've got to figure out. Now, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years as far as what interests you? Is that manufacturing associate, maybe an engineering technician, being part of someone that's validating a program, helping make that medicine, and then working with individuals to make sure that you've developed a drug and you're working on a team? Or do you want to be that laboratory associate, that scientist, that laboratory manager, or clinical research supervisor? So those are the things that you've got to think about, but we do have the career tracks to help with those. We also have some articulation agreements, and ECU is one example, but say you go through BioWork, you get hired in the industry. You want to go back, you want to get your 2-year degree program in biopharmaceutical technology, you get those credits from completing BioWork. And you're like, well, now that I've done that, I am in the industry and I have a job. Where do I go from here? A lot of the industry has what we call educational benefit, meaning that if you apply for a degree program and they see that that degree program is meaningful for them, meaning it's value added for you to go through and get that education, they will pay for your education. So much so that when I was in the industry, they actually paid part of my PhD. So with that articulation agreement, you could use that educational benefit and have your school paid for. And ECU is one of those that has a 4-year program that ours feeds into by taking those transfer credits. If you would like to know more about that, I've also got my dean's information here as well, and her contact information. And Paul, who's on the call, is going to drop a bunch of contact information and our current class schedule into our chat for everyone. Anyone have any questions? No one? Well, I see Janice is on the call. You said that you not necessarily would always want to work with people. Was there anything that you found interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been very helpful for why I signed up for this, just to get an overview. I actually already have like graduate level education, but I want to get into pharma manufacturing side of
Mm-hmm.
things. So I'm really looking at just the BioWork certificate,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to continuing on with like a associates or something like that. But this has been really helpful just to learn about what's included in that program, and the fact that it's online, hybrid, day, evening, that kind of thing, which is really what I needed to know. So this has
Wow.
been very helpful.
Well, good. I'm glad. We last year, whenever I took over as director, our other director retired for BioWork, retired. I came out of industry and came back into community college, and very much like you, Janice, I was already had a master's degree. I was teaching at a community college, and I went into pharma from teaching from community college. But it was my research background, I think, that really interests the biopharma industry, because I was cell biology and molecular genetics, and I was teaching a lot of the single subjects. When I taught micro, I was teaching the fundamentals of what gene therapy was.
Right.
And once I was in the industry, they figured I had a knack for training. So they kind of moved me over into that realm. And I worked with the community college and found out about the BioWork programs. I became more fascinated with what it was and what it could actually offer, not only the industry, but the individuals. So whenever this opportunity came up, I was like, yeah, I've got to do this.
Well, sounds like a very good fit for you. And like I said, it seems like it would offer kind of what I'm looking for, as far as just getting me up to speed with things I'm really not familiar with. I'm more on the R&D side of things. And so this sounds like it might work out perfectly for me.
All right. Well, I do anticipate hearing from you, Janice. My contact information will also be dropped in the chat, as well as information about scholarships and pre-apprenticeship opportunities. And our current class schedule should also be in there as well.
Wonderful.
Cynthia, looks like there is a hand up from Stacy.
What was that, Andrea?
It looks like there's a hand up from Stacy Rebel, who is a guest.
Hi,
Oh.
yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, hello. Yes. I guess what I wanted to ask, you're probably going to get to, is what's the next step? How can we register? This sounds like it's something for me as well. I actually have worked in the biotech field, but I did so after I have a bachelor's, so I'm kind of like Janice, where I'm not necessarily looking to get like necessarily a lot more education, but I have worked for biotech companies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is more of like the direction I'd like to go, is this manufacturing processes.
Right. We have classes. I have another class starting at RTP, Stacy. It is during the day, and it starts the end of May. And I have another one that will start at the RTP campus in the evening from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, Monday and Tuesday nights. That one's going to post probably in the next day or so. So those will be the last ones for the summer, but I'm already posting fall schedule as well.
Okay.
So a quick way to find out where all that's at, I do have Paul dropping that in the chat for everyone. But if you go to our Wake Tech website, if you type in BioWork across the top, you hit the magnifying glass. The second page will say Bioprocess Technician, and you click that, and that tells you everything about my program, including the available classes.
Perfect. Because I saw one coming up in May, one of the online ones. I think I've been there before, but I'm going to go check it again, because I didn't know if you had more coming up. But like you just said, you're going to have some dropped for summer soon, and then fall.
I'm going to have some more. It's just our program is growing so much that I've already, right at this point, I've hit more than they had last year in total at this point, and I'm having to offer more classes, which is awesome.
Heck yeah. Last thing on that note too, since you were mentioning that some of these companies will pay for, I'm definitely open to an associate's. That's fine, but I think that would be the limit. Is that something that you would get better opportunities than just this course by itself if you would have more opportunities with an associate's?
Well, since BioWork is an industry recognized credential, part of our EDA Build Back Better grant is that we are striving with our industry partners to have BioWork mentioned as a required credential. Which means if you've got the BioWork certificate, you're good to go. There is a state process technician exam. North Carolina is the only state that I know that offers this exam. Wow. And it is based on the prereq for that is you have to have have completed BioWork and been awarded successfully a certificate.
Wow. And then you take that exam and essentially it's basically you don't necessarily need the associates then for actual jobs. I mean, if you want to learn more, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, yeah, you don't necessarily need it by the sounds of it to get more jobs. You
don't, but if you want to pursue the associates, you've got that opportunity. But by getting your foot already in the door, let somebody else pay for it.
Exactly. Right. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Not opposed to more education ever. Just if someone can pay for it, that's great. Yeah.
I'm all for letting somebody else, throughout my life, it's been scholarships, grants, whatever that I could do to get it some way that it was reimbursed. I'm first generation college grad. So, my dad went through community college and he picked up night classes whenever I was a child. So it's very, very dear to my heart.
Right on. I agree.
So was there anyone else? Because I can't see if there's hands going up or not. All right. So if there aren't any more questions, Andrea, if you want to take over, Paul, were you able to drop everything in the chat for everyone? Was everyone able to snag and grab those things? I know this is also going to be recorded, but if you have any further questions, you can reach out to me. My phone number was included as well as my email. Very quick to respond on email. I do tend to go from one campus to another campus because BioWork is growing. But I do thank you all for coming in tonight, and I do look forward to seeing you register for class.
Thank you so much.
All right. Andrea, anything else? And it was nice meeting you, Janice. Nice meeting you all.
Nice meeting you.
Thanks so much for your time, Cynthia.
All right.